how are you?
I'm great. I'm living the dream. I'm going to Mexico in the morning.
Where in Mexico?
Just Cancun for 3 days. I needed a break.
Just to get
So
away?
yeah, we're taking the kids all inclusive, like just
Mm-hmm.
not, I don't have to worry about feeding anyone for like 72 hours.
Where does that rank in just the list of your daily issue concerns, like priority wise?
Where does it rank? It ranks pretty low, if I'm honest. And it usually hits about 5:30 that I'm like, ugh.
Oh shit.
So we moved to like a weird hippie village
Yep.
south of Atlanta. And in this hippie village, there are no restaurants. That's not true. There are 3 restaurants, but like we have done that enough. So it requires a lot more like parenting, if I'm honest. Like I have to like think about it more than I did before.
How
There's
old
no
are your kids?
Grubhub. 10 and 12.
Almost old enough. Well, old enough to pay attention to this and recognize their mother prioritizes them at the bottom of her to-do list.
I really appreciate that. They have no question where they fall in the pecking order, and it is relatively low. They would not be surprised by this comment.
But but
I mean, it is what
but
it is.
what you're doing is setting an example for them to pursue your dreams and tackle challenging things and do those things
I really appreciate
and
you
put
saying
your
that.
kids behind all that.
I don't know. You grew up with parents that were entrepreneurs. Like I didn't grow up with parents that were entrepreneurs. I had no model for this, like how to balance a family and a business. Like the business it is an ever present, omnipresent thing in my children's lives. I would like to believe that they have an MBA now, like the amount, like my husband and I work together. And so I would imagine that they will probably crush business school one day. Like they would probably be able to read a P&L like pretty
Eh,
soon.
they might skip
You don't think
business
so?
school. I think they might
That
skip business
even
school.
better if they got to like I
So
couldn't. I didn't
I,
have the opportunity. I had to go.
I think that I can only speak from my own experience. I can't speak from anyone else's, but as someone who grew up with a father who was an entrepreneur and was like pursuing a dream, when you see people who are pursuing a passion, there's something that is just so attractive about it, and you just want it gravitates, it pulls you in. And so seeing that at a young age, like your 10 and 12-year-old kids are now seeing you running around, going on podcasts to talk about a book you just wrote, like running your business, which is a whole separate thing from the book, even though they're, tangentially tied, just
Yeah.
taking on, triathlons. It's like things like that. They motivate the kid of the parent to want to do that. I mean, so like, I wouldn't be surprised if the 10 and 12-year-old end up being more of, like quick starts and just wanting to get out and do stuff because they've seen their mother do the same for their
They
entire.
already are, right? Like the 12-year-old had a golf cart washing business this summer.
Okay.
And she's always kind of looking for ways to make money, also because money burns a hole in her pocket. But she's relatively entrepreneurial, I think. And it's really cool because they're both girls. And mommy's the boss, right? Mom's on the road. Mom's the one who's moving and shaking. My husband is no slacker, but like mom's the one that does it all. So it is kind of cool to set this example. I didn't have this model, and I certainly didn't have a model for a female entrepreneur, right? Like I have some really cool role models in my life, but none of them are women from the early age. So it's kind of cool.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the episode then. Let's use that.
Awesome.
Let's get this thing going. So,
Yeah.
to my friends, to our audience, welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I am your host, who has been slacking a little bit. We're riding the sine cosine wave or whatever, up and down the roller coaster, where for a few weeks I'm locked in and scheduling a bunch of these and grinding, and then I just lose interest. I mean, it's not that I lose interest in these conversations, because as soon as I'm sitting here, I'm excited and like jacked up about this. But like when I don't have people scheduled, it's just hard to get back into it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's like anything else. It's like going to the gym
It's like
or
going to the
eating
gym.
well. It's anything else. Like
Once
once you get out of practice, you takes a minute to get that motion back in, like, the muscle memory, I think is what
Yeah.
I'm looking for. Once you
Yeah.
get back into it, you're going to schedule like 25 in a row. It's going to be
That,
awesome.
that's what's happening right now. I've got like 9 in my head. I've got a couple I've sent messages out for, and that's how it works. And so like through the audience, you'll get a probably good 2 months here, and then we'll have a couple weeks of slowdown. But
if you
we're
want my experience share on this, get
please.
yourself a human to hold you accountable to getting it done every week.
That's what I'm doing. I mean, this is so I posted on LinkedIn looking to hire at least one person, maybe even 2, depending on kind of the role and function. But I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of the thinking. Was having someone else who I'm accountable to, who I'm responsible for, who's they're expecting to be able to make some money every week off of this. That would be the kind of fire I need. That kind of fire. Like I think one of the things I always, not always, but like would think about from time to time during my time at Molo was all the people that you're responsible for. And it creates a really good grounding. It's a great grounding exercise because it helps you like clear all the bullshit and say okay, we've got a problem right now. Like this isn't working the way we want it to. Who's going to figure it out? And what happens if we don't figure it out? And when you look around and you don't see the people who are going to figure it out, and you realize it's you and it's your team together, you got to figure it out. And then you realize if you don't figure it out, something way worse could happen. These people, all of a sudden you're cutting jobs, layoffs, or the business is gone altogether. And then you're thinking about, I have 20 or 50 or 100 or 300 people who will be without jobs if we don't figure this out.
It's the driving force for me. It's driving force. And I get called a lot of things: aggressive, direct, 4-letter words, I'm sure, behind my back. And when I'm direct and aggressive about the business, it is always because it impacts jobs. So we have 42 employees today. That's a lot of humans for me. It's the biggest, every morning I get up and I'm running the biggest company I've ever run. I've never run one as big as Molo, but like those are individuals that have mortgages and car payments and daycare. And like I have such a intimate responsibility with those people and their responsibilities for their families. So when I do get aggressive, it's usually because someone has done something that impacts a customer. And if a customer says, hey, we're done with you, that equals jobs. And I'm just take so seriously the fact that I am a job creator. And when you're a job creator, like there's always this, subliminal in the back of your mind. I don't know if you feel this way. Like it's all falling apart. It's all coming down. Everyone around you is going to lose their job. Like you're a total screw up and it's never going to work. And every day it works, you're like shocked that it's working. You're like, this is amazing. One more day, but it hasn't all come falling down.
It's crazy the way the mind works because over the course of a week, I remember times where I went from thinking this team is incredible and what they've accomplished is like nothing I've seen done before in our industry, and our customers love us and everything's great and we're to the moon. And 3 days later, it's how is everything so broken? Oh my God. How do we even exist?
Is yours triggered on one email? Like one email can trigger me from like we're to the moon to like it's all falling apart.
Yes, 100%. It's the trigger that then sets off the negative train of thought, the literal negative train of thought, because it's one to the next, to the next, to the next, and then it's six things, and then you feel overwhelmed, and then you're just like, I can't do this. How the hell did I get here? 300 people, 140 people, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's like I'm not qualified. I can't do this, or they. How do we fix this?
What do you do? Mine is I've got a bunch of people around me that I've like put around me strategically to like pull me up out of that. Be like, no, you're amazing. Like, don't forget all the things that you've done.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm similar to you. I think that part of this, for me at least, was a Vogrich thing. So my business partner was Matt Vogrich. He was our president and COO. And he was like, when I was triggered, we knew that was like a potential recipe for disaster if not effectively managed. And I was more likely to cause more problems than I was create solutions when I got triggered. And so I think
I'm looking forward to my team hearing this, Andrew, because they can be like, "Oh, she's not the only one."
I don't know that that's a good camp we're in together. It just
Maybe,
is a camp
but
we're
at
in.
least we're not alone, right? At least
We're
there's
not
two of
alone.
us.
We're not alone. There's more than two also. But I think it's, you know, you get to a place where your team knows you well enough that they know how to kind of manage you, and you learn how to manage it. And so a lot of times it was me getting myself out of the way and getting myself out of the business for a day, out of it for 2 days, and just like leaving the office, going for a 2-hour walk. Sometimes I'd take a freaking edible and go for a 4-hour walk and just be like, I need to get so far away from this and to a place where my mind will create different situations, and then I can focus on those. And then it's like, oh wait, like we have this huge thing coming up for these guys. That could be a big win for us. Let's focus our attention there and not worry about whatever this problem is that like isn't really the end of the world.
My team calls it work drugs.
What are work drugs?
When I get in the weeds on something that I don't belong in and I swirl around a thing that I shouldn't be involved in, it's like 10 clicks below me, but it's like, I don't know, a misspelling on a email that went out and I'm just like in the weeds on it. And my leadership team is like, you have got to get off the work drugs. Like, we need you up here. We can't have you down here. And I think, the more I run a business and the busier I get, just like sheer volume of other things to do, I can't do that kind of stuff anymore. And then also the more I trust them, right? Like I've got an incredible team. And the more I trust that team, the less often I get into work drugs and kind of get down there. So
Yeah.
I'm in a really good spot right now.
The question I would ask around that is, the trust is up here. It's a higher level of consciousness. It's recognizing the bigger picture of, I have these highly qualified people I've hired. I've given them KPIs and expectations. They've agreed to those. They know what they're doing. That's up here. And I guess I'm on audio. So the point I'm making is that's higher level thinking.
Sure.
But the email that comes through from the customer that's pissed, that you then see a typo from your team and you see another issue, it brings you way down. And we get emotional, we get triggered, and we get frustrated. And it's like, do you recognize like an ability or a way to stay up here, stay at the higher level of thought, and not bring yourself down to the work drug chaos? Like, or is it just like you're hoping to get better as you go? It happens, you take yourself out of it, and you got to kind of apologize sometimes for like, hey, I didn't mean to jump in and do this like that. Because I don't
I
know
think
that
it's
I ever got.
maturity.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's maturity. And I think you've had a couple of guys in this podcast that I've worked for who are excellent models of that. I worked for Doug Wagner, right? Directly for Doug a long time ago. He was an excellent model of not flying off the handle. I made a big mistake one time. Like I made a huge mistake. Like I was in tears and I walked in his office and I was like, I made this mistake. And you could kind of tell that he wanted to like unleash on me. And then he kind of looked at me and he was like, you're going to beat yourself up more for this than I need to beat you up. So like, this is never going to happen again. Right. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm in tears. I'm so upset. And he was like, okay, take a walk. Like, you're good. We're good. And so I think when I get really, really excited about things like that, Scott Pruneau is another that's very similar to that. I try to emulate those two men, like really solid leaders that I am absolutely sure that those two guys have wanted to rip into people or me specifically, right, at times. But if I can emulate those two, I'll be in really good shape.
What's really interesting about both of those names, with respect to my own experience with them through the podcast, is they both had a temperament to them that was very calm. In fact, with Doug, I think we spent 10 to 15, we spent some period of time talking about meditation. And I would be remiss to not mention that. I look at you and I see two type A's, and the type A for you self-declared in your book. So I'm not judging you.
No, you're good. Yeah.
I would also guess if you took the Enneagram, you would be an active controller, an 8, which is what I am. And I think we thrive on our passion, and we know how to turn emotion into a positive for us. And it can help it attracts people to us in ways when we are singularly focused on something that we are really good at or know really well, or we're like trying to build whatever it is. When that emotion is misdirected through triggers, that where the emotion is anger and frustration, we are a menace to society and a problem.
And to our own businesses.
To our own businesses. Society is
Yeah.
part of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's anyone in our
all
wake.
of society.
Yeah.
Anyone I come in touch with. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a connection there between, the positive and the negative, or if they're just two different characteristics of people like us. But it's just I've spent a year now, longer, trying to get into meditation specifically to solve this very thing we're talking about. Because you bringing up Doug Wagner doesn't surprise me in the least, because he does strike me as someone who just has that temperament that says, hey, whatever's coming at me, I am not going to emotionally react to. I'm going to very deliberately respond to with what I believe is the best course of action to get us the best result we're looking for, which that's the kind of leadership that people need. It doesn't mean that what we have with respect to how we can ignite a fire for people isn't as valuable or separately different or more valuable, but marrying it all would be the home run solution.
I think it would be cool for you and I to do this podcast again in 5 years or longer and see what happens as we mature.
If
we mature. Hopefully you mature. I think I'm going to mature. I'm 42 today. I think you're younger than I am.
34.
And, I think we're young, right? Like you're 10 years younger than I am almost, right? Like there's so much for us to learn. There's so many more opportunities to fail. And I think every time I fail, every time I misplace my energy or I fly off the handle at someone who probably deserves it but doesn't deserve it from the CEO, I think that's the other piece of this is like there's an element of you are the leader. Like what you say has so much more gravitas and impact when you're in a C-suite role than it ever had when I was in my corporate career. And so I think you were really, really young when you took on a CEO role. Like that's a lot of responsibility for a young person. And I think it'll be interesting to see what you do next and if you're a different type of CEO as you mature.
I hope so. I certainly do. I mean, it's one of the things that I'm most interested in wanting to start another business for, is to see what it looks like and if I can change some of the things. Because I don't know if this is. I think as I learn about ADHD, which is a new thing for me, I'm learning about some of the aspects of it, and some of it is this. There's this like element of guilt and shame that I think people with ADHD do, but maybe others as well, where we like carry it for a long time and we get stuck in this negative thought loop where it's like constantly replaying old business scenarios where I was an asshole, basically, where I was a bad
I think
leader.
that's actually associated with anxiety.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I am not a psychiatrist by any stretch, but I have family members very close to me with ADHD and anxiety. And I think it's I'm sure that there's a spectrum, right?
For sure.
But a therapist once told me that someone close to me replays things in their head over and over and over again, and it has to do with anxiety. And I don't do that.
That's good. I mean, that's a really positive thing. For me, it's a problem, but it's the reason why I'm most looking forward to wanting to start another business is it's almost like to right the wrongs and to show that you can be a more elevated leader. But it's hard because you can't do it if you're not in the weeds doing it. Like, sitting here on the podcast, there's not a situation where I'm going to get like triggered and blow up at you or something like that.
So like, should we try it?
Yeah, see what you got.
JK, no thanks.
All right, we're all over the place. I don't even think we've said your name since we got on here. So I've got two things to do. One, shout out to our sponsors who pay the bills. The Rapido Solutions Group, my boys, Danny Frisco and Roberto Acaza. They are the best in the business at sourcing talent for you. They're based in Mexico and Guadalajara, and we worked with them at Molo, and I also worked with them at Coyote. I mean, these guys are great. give them a shout. Danny Frisco, Roberto Acaza. All right, that out of the way. Our guest today is Mrs. Kara Smith Brown. You've gotten 15 minutes of us talking about ourselves and our leadership skills or lack thereof. But we're going to talk about your life. So you started your career at Echo Global Logistics as the, quote, marketing girl.
Right.
Talk to me about being the marketing girl. That
in
struck
general
home
or
with
at
me.
Echo?
So what I actually want you to first talk about is the notion of the term the marketing girl, because I actually think that is a way bigger thing than people who haven't sat in my seat would understand. Because like, just to give you the frame of reference, everything that I read in your book just hit home, and it just felt like I was realizing I was replaying countless scenarios in my head of being a CEO, a sales-minded CEO who, throughout Molo's tenure, I owned our sales and marketing. And it was really, I owned sales, and we just had this little thing we called marketing next to it that seemed it should go well together. Right? Like, this is probably making a lot of sense for what you hear from people like myself.
You're triggering me. It's okay. Yeah.
Yes. So, and it was like any other freight broker sales, I think, company where, you tried to give them a couple tools. We had Zoom Info for a long time. We had some level of Salesforce with our Revenova license when that was our initial TMS. And then we gave them some rules of the hunt. This is how long you can pursue a lead, and this is the forward progress you need to see to be successful. And then we said, go figure it out. And like, bam, call these guys and get opportunities. And we would jump in and try to help them and whatnot. And eventually we try to instill a little sales training, like specific customer sales training. But when it came to marketing, I basically just would hire a marketing girl and then another marketing girl. And then I was like, we should try a higher level marketing girl, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing with the first two. Then let's go to a CMO. And then it's like, I don't really know how to work with her. Let's go back down to marketing girl because it's cheaper. And we still don't know what the fuck we're doing. So I say all that to pass the mic to you. And is that common? Let's start there.
Yes. That is the short answer. The answer is yes. There are very, very few freight brokers, carriers, or freight tech companies that have strong marketing components, teams, leaders, etc. I could probably name the strongest ones off the top of my head. And this is super common. We also, back in the day, on the sales floor of Echo in 2006, like, there was no reason really to have a marketing department. Like, we grew up exactly the same way you guys grew up, both on the floor of Coyote. Literally, you were down the street, or at Molo, like, you just handed the 1,200 22-year-old boys on the sales floor a list, and they banged through the list. And I think the rise, if you will, of the marketing girl or the marketing department is the same slope as the democratization of marketing technology tools. So this is HubSpot, Salesforce, Marketo. I've got a great story in the book about using names. We changed the names of people to get truck drivers to open emails. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that. I've got that. I've got notes of things I want to bring up, and Bambi and Sapphire are on the list.
Bambi is on it. Yeah, Bambi's on the list. But I think in the early days, like, the 2006-ish, which is when I started at Echo, which was sort of the golden age of the disruptive, right? The CH disruptors, if you will. We didn't have any tools. There was nothing for us to really do except make sell sheets, make sure that the website looked nice and that people could find us, right? So that when someone did make a phone call and they went to the Echo website, that it was physically there, that it was present, right? There wasn't a whole lot else for us to do. But the democratization of these tools, specifically HubSpot, has allowed like even SMB companies to have a lot more connection between the marketing and sales teams. The marketers can really get into the market and understand what's happening in the market. And there's an opportunity to really use these technology tools to differentiate even the smallest SMB broker from the big guys and find your own place in the world, which I think is really the marketing team's job.
So, as the marketing girl, what was your job at Echo? Like, what did that look like then versus what you would assume it could look like today? Did that look like versus what a mature marketing team should look like today?
So yeah, I mean, this is 2006. I was hired before Doug. I watched Doug get hired through a glass conference room at 600 West Chicago. It was kind of fun.
That's
And I got to
interesting.
work directly for him. It was great. He was an amazing boss, best boss I've ever had. And that was it. I mean, it was make sure the website looks great and is up. I remember making sell sheets for LTL and truckload and talking about the number of carriers and helping with a little bit of PR, right? Like we did a little bit of PR. But for the most part, it was culture. I remember when I left Echo, Doug said to me, "Are you sure you want to leave? Like this is so fun. Like this is really you're never going to have this experience again." He also said to me, "Don't love a company because it'll never love you back." And I had sort of fallen in love with the Echo culture, and I can say this today, like I was kind of integral to how it was built, and I was like number 12 on the floor or something like that. So it was really more about culture. It was really about can people find us? And then I was super, super fortunate that when they decided to go public, Doug walked by one day and he's like, "Do you want to write an S1?" And I was like, "Yeah, I will Google that and I will tell you when I'll have it done by." Yeah. And he was like, "Okay, we have bankers, like they'll help you. But yeah, you should probably figure that out." So, I got to write the NASDAQ website for the Echo IPO, and I got to write the S1, and I got to write the press release. Like that was kind of what we did. That was what marketing did in 2006. I think the second half of your question is what should you expect today, right? And today, the ability of your what I like to call go to market team, right, which is the connection of marketing into sales, is all about technology. And if your team isn't asking about intent data or ABM or how to get in front of the right ideal customer profile or what does that look like, how to be measuring volume, velocity, and value inside of the funnel, that's the future, and it's what I should have been doing really in the early days. But the technology didn't support it back then. This was pre Salesforce. I mean, I'm that old, right?
Yeah.
Like Salesforce didn't exist. So now, really strong marketers or go to market individuals should be technology users. They should be really strong technologists, um, putting the best possible technology or marketing technology tech stack to use to support the sales team. I hope that I came through in the book, that marketing needs to support sales. And that's it. Like that's the whole job.
So I do recall you multiple times talking about the relationship between sales and marketing. In fact, I think in your conclusion, you said it twice, that sales and marketing need to work hand in hand. And I want to, let's talk about that for just a little bit, because I think that part of the challenge that companies maybe have, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, is certainly the relationship between sales and marketing. You'll agree with that, but to get to like the root of why, I think ego probably plays a little bit part of this. Sales naturally has ego. Um, I think you often see sales feel. Do I want to use the word superior to marketing? I don't know if that's the right word, but there's a dynamic, it feels like, where it's like marketing is just kind of like throwing shit at us. We're the people who know how to land business. Like they just get in our way. Can you talk about like ways in which like how do you get a marketing and sales team to work together well? Because I do think, as I just was talking about, there are these natural issues that exist that create friction and reduce collaboration. I agree, based on what I read in the book, that like the answer is a cohesive sales and marketing team. But getting there feels like a challenge just because of, I don't know, maybe it's the natural order of things of how these people are in these roles, or the fact that sales seems so clear and easy to measure versus marketing, which before I read this book, I would have said was impossible to measure. Now it feels like there are tactics to do so more effectively. But can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I think the first most important piece is the marketing team needs to understand the unit economics of the business. And I think in general, this is a generalization, the marketing team of most brokers, carriers, and freight tech companies are not aware of the unit economics, which is how much is each deal worth? What is my ARR per deal, my average annual run rate, right? My average annual run rate, so AARR per deal. How many do I need to hit the goal that leadership has told me that we need to hit? And how fast are they coming into the funnel and being closed? And I think if a marketer does not know that math, they do not belong at the table. And a sales team will not respect the marketer unless that marketer is bringing that math to the table. And so I think that's number one. And the marketers have to show genuine curiosity. Like you have to actually care about what this math is. And everyone needs to be aligned around the math. And I talk a lot in the book about having a point of view. It is okay if your point of view is different from the sales teams, right? If you're seeing the top of the funnel and the sales team is seeing the middle and the bottom of the funnel, et cetera. But you need to have a point of view. And I think a lot of marketers misstep by spending so much time and energy on just stuff that doesn't matter, right? Like Facebook posts or, just number of eyeballs on things versus things that are actually happening to prospects, to current customers, and to future customers that are happening inside the sales funnel. So I think number one, marketers really need to get their math together. You really just need to get a seat at the table. I think I also say in the book, if I don't, it's something I say a lot to junior people, is that finance is the language of the boardroom. And so if a marketer cannot put their deliverables and they can't put their value in financial terms, you're never going to get a seat at the table. So I think the book is trying to guide marketers down that path. Do I think sales and marketing are ever going to be like kumbaya? Absolutely not. But there are ways to do it. I think the second piece is leadership. Having really, really strong leaders that understand that this is possible is also super important. Walking into a company, do this all the time, and seeing a sales leader who's like, this has never worked, it's never going to work, marketing's garbage, right? All they do is send us stupid stuff, like, et cetera. We just walk away. We're like, no thanks. They also probably aren't going to hire us. But lastly, I think is the leadership needs to understand that there is a portion of what sales brings in that marketing touched. Marketing's never going to take 100% attribution. And so I don't put attribution models in the book, but like there are 8 attribution models. Do I get 10% credit, 20% credit, 1% credit? Like give me some amount of credit for getting our brand wherever it is, right? We don't usually like to use the B word, but like marketing had something to do with you closing this deal. Am I going to take credit for like actually getting on the phone and closing the deal? No, but give me like 10% of credit. And that comes from the leadership. Leadership has to say, okay, we're going to give marketing first touch, last touch, or the type of attribution model that we're going to use. And that can be really hard.
Yes. So there's an example you use in the book for Redwood. I assume if they're in the book, I can use their name, right?
Yeah, it's published. Yes.
I assume so. Just want to clarify.
Yeah.
So
they've been a customer a long time.
You talk about how Redwood wanted to be more than a broker, and they wanted to be a technology partner, and thus became the, I guess, origination of the 4PL concept for them. And at your suggestion or through you guys, they developed. You talk a lot about analyst relationships, right, as part of the early process in sharing good news and tracking and following
interest. Yeah, well done.
And the analyst relationship piece I thought was really interesting, and I it all makes sense to me. But where I was struggling with was what you were just talking about now, with just how do you assign credit for a situation like Gartner, for example, where it's like, okay, great idea, get them in front of Gartner, develop that rapport with Gartner, and now you're on one of their special quadrants, whatever. a year and a half from now, someone is considering a new solution for 4PL and they reach out to Redwood because they see the Gartner thing. You have no idea they saw the Gartner thing. Maybe.
I do know they saw the Gardner thing.
Sorry, I should rephrase and say they didn't tell their salesperson, hey, I saw you in Gartner. They just said,
Okay.
hey, I know about you guys. I'm looking for 4PL. So in those kind of situations, like how do you get to a place where marketing can get the credit they deserve? Because even if it's not that specific example, I'm sure you understand the concept there that like you do things and you don't know when it actually has its impact.
So, two answers to your question. The first is senior leadership has to decide how much you're going to attribute, and it's inside of these tools, Salesforce, HubSpot, et cetera. You have attribution models. And so you literally, the leadership has to make a call. Like we're going to attribute 10 or 15 or 20% of the overall win of this to marketing. And you're right. Sometimes it's kind of squishy. Some Gartner kind of relationships are kind of squishy. The second answer to your question is intent data, which I think is the sexiest thing to happen specifically to supply chain in a really long time. So is it okay if I take a little pause and okay. So
listen, you just made a very aggressive comment.
I did. That was very aggressive.
Listen, I love it. I support it. Let's talk about it.
All right. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how to think about intent data. So
I think you have to start with what intent data is for the audience.
Yeah. I'm going to tell this is the story to help you understand what it is. It's okay. So it's kind of like a little experience share. So in November of 2026, Tim Cook, I believe Tim Cook is going to get on stage. And it's going to be a normal Apple briefing. And then he's going to drop the bomb. And he's going to say, Apple is insourcing their supply chain by 2030. And the entire supply chain community is going to freak out, right? XPO and UPS and Geodis are all, what the hell's going on? CEOs are going to turn to their chief of commercial and be like, how did we not know Apple was insourcing their supply chain? What the heck is going on? Are we on the list to help them insource, right? Who is going to get this Apple multi-billion-dollar contract to help them insource? That did not happen that morning. Tim Cook did not wake up that morning and think, oh, I'm just going to disrupt all of my supply chain partners and tell everyone we're going to do this. That decision was made by a Tiger team in Cupertino, California, who right now in 2024 are currently looking for WMS, TMS, OMS. How do I buy a fleet? Where do I put a warehouse? And they're sending buying signals or intent signals into the marketplace. It is not Tim Cook who is doing this research. It's folks 4 or 5 clicks beneath him that are creating a report that's going to go up to their leadership team. The exact same thing is happening in every enterprise shipper across the country. When changes happen inside an enterprise, these buying signals or these intent signals are being sent into the marketplace. Your next question is going to be, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? When they download a Gartner report, we can literally see it. We can see the individual, the IP address that downloaded the modern 4PL Gartner report. So sometimes we can see the attribution to the Gartner relationship if we have intent sort of backing us up. And all of our clients that are using an intent tool, so this is 6 Sense, Rollworks, or Enrich, these are kind of the 3 tools that we like the best. Anyone who's using this tool are seeing outsized ROI. It's basically the same thing as like when you go to look for a fishing pole and it follows you around the internet for the next 2 days. We're just doing it at a B2B level. And enterprise shippers, there's about 20,000 of them, right? 19,677 shippers in the US that matter, like material shippers. As they make changes in their supply chain, those signals are in the marketplace. If you can pick up on those signals, you can be the first to solve that problem.
And what you're saying is if I start a new brokerage and I want to give my sales and marketing team the best chance to win, this is something I need to have.
Hands down. And if you don't have it today, and if you're current go-to-market marketing and sales team isn't asking for it, it's time to start it's time to start looking at it. Like this is going to shape the way that we go to market over the next 5 to 10 years.
So to put my I guess contrarian hat on, or ignorant hat on, whichever you want to use, I think there's probably a situation where experienced 15-year freight executive hears everything you're saying and says, first of all, there's 20,000 of us. Nobody's Googling to get a truck. Like, we're not, it's simple. I just need to email the guy and get him to give me freight. And like, so do you get what I'm insinuating? Like, someone would, they would someone might dumb down our industry, our sales process to, the guy needs trucks. I can get trucks. I don't need the intent data. He needs trucks. He probably doesn't even need trucks because he's got a bunch of people giving him trucks. I just need to trick him into convincing or into giving me a chance to provide trucks. You know what I'm saying? Like, is the industry too dumbed down for this? Is too simple for the straight freight brokering, or this still applies just as much, and the ignorance is ignorance?
It's a really good question. I'll tell you what I do know. I do know my clients are winning. I do know that there's a piece of this that I didn't mention before, which is you really need to plant a flag. So this doesn't work in a traditional truckload brokerage setting where you are willing to ship anything for anyone. That is not the right vertical, or it's not the right use case.
Is that because the ICP is too vague and broad?
Yes. Thank you for reading the book. Yes. The ICP is too broad.
I'm ready for this test.
I love that you actually read it. Like, this is amazing. I think you might be like the fourth person to have read the book, you and my mom. So thanks for that. The ideal customer profile must be tight enough. So it must be clear enough that you can tell this intent tool exactly who you want to get freight from. And there's a piece that we mentioned in the book just a little bit, which I think is also really sexy. There are 3 ways to make money in freight. 1, keep your current customers and sell them more stuff. 2, steal freight from someone else. And 3, do more of both, right? Like, that's it. Keep current customers or take some from someone else. Like, the keeping current customers is also super important, especially in 2024, right? So the other way we use intent data is we load up the list of current customers, and then we load up a list of your competitors. And you can see when your current customers are searching for your competitors inside your intent tool. And so if you have, I don't know, you've got 5% of the John Deere truckload market in the Midwest, and you want to go get 7 or 10% of that share of wallet, the other competitors that are also sharing that lane with you, that's how you get in front of this. You get in front of it because you're waiting for someone to make a service failure, right? There's no new freight. This is how we get freight in brokerage. You can see that inside the intent signals from your current customers.
Are you essentially saying that if I want to haul for John Deere and I know that Mike Johnson is the director of transportation there and I know his email, I plug it into the tool, and moving forward, I basically know everything this guy Googles for the next eternity? Or like,
I wish it was that direct, Andrew. Like, I wish the answer was yes. The answer is no. It's a lot more nuanced than that. The tools will tell you, the most sophisticated tools will tell you the IP location of the people that are searching for specific things. Like, they're not going to tell you like, hey, like Andrew Silver yesterday was searching for a, fishing pole on the Cabela's site. Like, it's not going to get that detailed. But it's pretty creepy. Like, it's pretty darn close sometimes. And I will tell you that if you don't use these tools, you don't get anywhere close.
Yeah.
Right.
I get for sure.
Even if it gets you 20 to 30% closer to knowing what it's really going to tell you is something's happening at John Deere. We'll give you a better example. So John Deere is surging. Someone at John Deere, maybe not Mike, but someone at John Deere is surging on warehouse robots. What does that tell you?
It
Something's
tells,
changing.
yeah, something's going on. He's interested
Something's going on.
in making advancements or trying to do something.
Someone's been tasked inside of the John Deere supply chain to change something. In which case, that's your signal to say, hey, how's it going, Mike?
You mean I
What's
don't
been
call
going
him and say,
on?
"Hey, I know that you Googled
I
this
don't
yesterday"?
recommend that. It is super
That
creepy. I mean,
wouldn't work.
we can do it. Yeah, it's really weird. I don't recommend that you give it to your sales team and do that. But the short answer is yes. Like you're really looking for these breadcrumbs. You're looking for the breadcrumbs that are telling you something is changing. And if you're waiting until the leadership, gets on stage and says it, or if you're waiting for the annual report, you're late. Like you're late to the ball game. So this just gets you a little bit closer. John Dawes, a professor in Australia, talked about the rule of 95. That 95% of your buying market is not in market at any given time. So you're looking for the 5% that are buying, the 5% that are making a change, the 5% who are interested because something is changing. And it's usually senior leadership or the board being like, hey, let's go solve this problem, or let's not get held over a barrel by our broker like we were in the pandemic, or let's make sure that our carrier base is appropriate for what's coming. We're making a change, right? You're just trying to get in front of the problem. And these tools tell you this is the 5% of this whole list who are actively engaging in some sort of research.
So this is really hitting home. And mostly because I've been a sales rep my entire life. And selling to shippers for truckload freight has got to be one of the most challenging things for standing out. I haven't sold anything else, but all I can say is it's really hard. I know there are 20,000 plus people emailing the same individuals, asking for the same things, want opportunities. And so part of me initially was a little bit like, it's still just freight and it's truckload. But when I remember when I was doing my job, when I was actually selling, and I would sit at this freaking computer and think, okay, I want to get in with Land O'Lakes. And this is the exact customer I'm thinking of. How do I stand out? Like, how do I get this guy's attention? What's going on? And I'm going online, I'm reading reports. I'm going on his LinkedIn. I'm looking at where he went to college. I'm looking at any post he has ever done. And I'm trying to understand, like, who is this person? What do they care about? What do they like? What do they want? Is there anything that connects their business to mine? Is there anything that we have to offer that ties to his interests whatsoever? And you do it over and over again, and like you strike out a lot. I mean, you're just because you're swinging blind a lot of the time, or if not blind, your eyesight's pretty damn bad. We got lucky. In fact, I saw Uber did a commercial with Land O'Lakes. It was when Uber was spending a lot of money on a lot of things, and they
It's
did
a
a
weird
commercial.
thing to do a commercial for a freight broker.
Listen, freight brokers commercials don't exist.
I know. That's like, okay.
But they did it. And I saw it. I was sitting in the office, our first office in Molo at 10 o'clock at night when I saw it. The lights were off. I was by myself. And I just sent an email to the guy and was like, I saw the commercial. And I just added some color. He responded in 5 minutes with a contract. It's timing. But it's finding the information and leveraging it. What you're telling me is I don't need to spend as much time blindly surfing the internet because there are tools out there that will do a little bit of that for me and throw the data at me and say, hey, here are the 3 things you should probably talk about. Am I?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's going to rank that list. So you had a book of 250 logos, right? That was your list. And you had to hit those 250 logos every week at some point, right? These tools tell you the top 50 or the top 20 that should be hit this week because something is happening inside their organization that is causing what they call a surge in account-based marketing. They call it surging. That's causing a surge. I'll give you a very specific example. We have a client, they're in the warehouse space. So they do big box spin ups. And their intent data in their tool showed that we were surging, their potential customers were surging on a robot provider, a single robot provider. Like 15 companies were all surging and looking at and researching this single robot provider. Well, let's just go ahead and write a partnership press release about this robot provider. So we did. And we relaunched this press release about this partnership that had been launched in 2021 to like no fanfare. And we moved 5 of those deals from awareness to opportunity because we were just paying attention to what these 15 accounts were really interested in at that moment. And so the other piece, Andrew, is like when you plant your flag, there's a couple of things. It doesn't have to be the thing that you do. So we'll use ITS logistics as an example. They're also in the book.
Yep. I like the example you used in the book for them.
Yeah, it's great. And so this planting of the flag has been really successful for ITS. And so we walked in, we said, hey, what do you guys do different than everybody else? Turns out they do drayage at all 26 ports, which is kind of weird. So we put together the very fun and exciting Port Rail Ramp Index, which is actually really damn sexy because it gets picked up now by CNBC, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Railway Age every single month. And it's turned into a real revenue generator for them. But they planted the flag on drayage. They're not like only a drayage provider. They're full service end-to-end supply chain, but they picked one thing. And so we've been guiding our clients towards pick a thing. If it's steel or produce or weird stuff, like if you're the best at like hauling like weird giant pieces of metal, like plant the flag on that. And that list, that ideal customer profile list, gets smaller when you plant the flag. And so your opportunity cost goes down. The opportunity cost by trying to hit all 19,677 shippers like you did when you were trying to do it, like it's so expensive. The customer acquisition cost on that is outrageous. Let us get you a little bit closer, cut down the opportunity cost around the funnel, and get your reps a little bit closer to closing the deal. And then back to your original question, you start to do this for the sales teams, and they start to ask for the marketing leads, right? They're like, hey, I need some marketing lead. Like where are my leads, right? So we just did this. We had a QBR yesterday with Lean Solutions as a client.
Oh, nice.
And we put $22 million in their bottom line, Andrew. And I asked for permission. I can share it with you. 22 million in their bottom line in 7 months using account-based marketing. It's insane. The other example is ODW. They're a warehouse logistics, a 3PL warehouse specifically, they're based in Ohio. 40 million in pipeline in 60 days. All of these examples are using intent data for a small group of shippers that need a very specific thing fixed. These shippers have a specific pain. So back to your question on like, hey, if you were to spin up a brokerage tomorrow, should you use this? Yes, you should. Everyone should be using this. But you do have to pick a lane. It's really hard to do it for produce and steel and CPG and like if you don't pick a lane, it's kind of like an inch deep and a mile wide.
So 2 questions. I get the idea of planting your flag, and I'm curious, you certainly wouldn't want 10, and it would be hard to, you said produce and steel, and there's, I get the idea that there's riches and niches, and you want to have the niche and you want to be known for something, but you don't want to be too narrow. So like, I am curious, are there ways that companies could have multiple that they're targeting at different times? Right? Okay. For example, we start in Q1 as winter's winding down. We start to plant our produce flag, knowing that by April, everyone's going to be looking for produce providers. And then by August, we start to plant our retail peak season surge flag. Like that concept can work, right? Where you're situationally planting flags.
Absolutely. I think the sales leadership or the go-to-market leadership has to kind of decide what you're going to spend your energy on. There are very few brokerages that are big enough, or carriers or freight tech companies in our space that have the kind of resources that you need to really truly plant a flag on more than like 2 or 3 things. Okay. Right? Like ITS has a really big marketing team. There's like 12 or I think there's 7 or 8 people on their team plus us. And there's 2 indexes we do. we do the port rail ramp, and we do the warehouse index. I think the Redwood also has a cross-border index we've been doing for a while. Like it takes a lot of energy and resources to really truly own the economics of a market and convince shippers that you're the expert. And there's a little bit of a risk you run, I think, if you're smaller, right? Like the CHs and the UPSs of the world, XPS of the world, like they're everybody to everybody. But if you're smaller, there's a little bit of risk you run by doing too many things in a calendar year. There's also the risk of random acts of marketing, or
I
what
was
can feel to the marketplace like random acts of marketing, right? Like your leadership team or your CEO posting a LinkedIn post once a quarter on your new initiative is not a strategy. That's a random act of marketing. So there's a pretty delicate balance, I think, between executing this strategy and just kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, because I feel like I feel like I spent a lot of time personally developing random acts of marketing,
I'm
and
sure you did.
it's where you spend the time looking at the market and you realize there's a hole here and I can fill it. So you're like, I'm going to plant a flag here, but it's not that. It's probably well thought out in the sense that like I know we can get some customers with this, but it's not fully fleshed out where we're tracking any of the results and following up down the road. It's like, this is what my ADHD brain is thinking about for 2 weeks. So we're going to go say that we do this because we can, and let's see what
Yeah,
happens. And it works and we get some customers. And then a month later, let's talk about this thing.
something else.
So I guess,
Yeah, I think
how do you
that's pretty
find the
common.
balance? Like, because I feel like that is true of organizations that don't have strong marketing presence, is you just get the sales minded folks who love the random acts of marketing.
I think it's leaning on a really strong marketing team,
Yeah.
right? That's going to tell you no. I think that's one of the things that we do at the business, which we haven't mentioned, which is called LeadCoverage. So the
Shame on us.
business, it's okay.
It's hard.
The business,
We're gonna have to do this
I
twice
just
because I
like
want.
hanging out. Yeah,
We
yeah.
haven't talked about you and your life at all, and I wanted to do that. There's a
Okay,
lot, but
let's do it.
this
I'm
stuff is
in.
so interesting. All the marketing stuff, I could go forever.
It's good. So at the business at LeadCoverage, we tell our clients no a lot, like probably more than you think that we would. And we'll tell people, hey, we don't do things that don't deliver revenue. So we would prefer not to write your sell sheets, fix your website, or make cold calls. None of those things work to drive revenue. So instead, I'd like to do XYZ because I know that this will drive revenue. Here are the 3 customers that I can show you where we've driven all this revenue. So if you stick with me, I promise you that we'll have revenue. And 9 times out of 10, we do, right? Unless they are the problem, which also sometimes happens. But 9 times out of 10, it works. So if you have a strong marketer on your team, or like blatant shout out, you can hire us. But like someone should be telling you no, that's not going to drive revenue. And if your marketer isn't telling you that, it's probably because they're a quote unquote marketing girl and they're just doing what they're told. And that's probably what you had when you were coming up. You had,
Oh,
really
100%.
nice women that were happy to do what they were told, and you told them to do the thing. And so they did the thing. And then you got another crazy harebrained idea. And so they did that. Right. And that's not, those aren't sustainable. And so your marketing person should be telling you no. Or they should be telling you, that's a great idea. You should go do that. I'm going to stay doing this thing that I know will drive revenue. And let me know when your thing works or doesn't work. Right.
Do you know what the number one thing I would guess executive teams tell the marketing girl to do when they don't know how to run a marketing team?
No, I want to know what you think. Tell me.
Culture.
Yeah, culture is such an enigma to me.
But I know I definitely I can. When you said that when you were in the marketing girl, they tossed
Oh,
culture
yeah.
at you too. It resonated because you're like, okay, I hire this marketing person to do the marketing stuff, but I don't know what the actual marketing stuff is supposed to be, and they're new, they don't really know, and so eventually you're like, okay, make the sell sheets, post on the LinkedIn for us, and then you're like, well, this isn't taking up a full day. Take on culture too, and like make sure people are having fun.
Yeah. Make the holiday party, plan the happy hour, do the things. Like that was what I did at Echo. I had a blast. Like it
Yeah,
was so much fun,
I mean,
but I wasn't providing any value,
this
like revenue. Like I wasn't,
different value.
Yeah, different value. That was valuable.
It
I mean,
wasn't
there was
marketing
value
value.
in what I was doing, but I was never going to get a seat at the table because I wasn't delivering financial value that I could tie a number to say, hey, this is where I am contributing to the bottom line, not just contributing to culture, which is, definitely important. But now we have the tools where we can do it. So we should be holding our marketing teams to a different standard because now they have, like, you have access to all these tools where you should be able to hold your marketing teams to these KPIs.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make a call out to, you know, any of the brokerages that might be listening to this that are probably in the range of 20 to 250 or 300 million. If your marketing looks like what I just described, you should call Kara because it's not. That's what our marketing looked like for a long time, and that's not marketing. It's managing social media and some other things, but it's not. Having now officially read this book, I know that is not what marketing is supposed to be, and there's a better way.
I'm so glad that you took that from the book. It was such a labor. It has taken so long. We have a whole chapter approved by Gartner, which is crazy. We've had like other people help us write this thing. There's a bunch of case studies in it, and the fact that you really took something away from it just makes my heart so happy. But also, thanks for finding value in all the energy I put into this thing. So
I
thank
mean, you
you.
could feel the energy. You could feel it. So I'm glad you did it. Let's talk about the book for a second. I mean, we've been talking about the book, but let's talk about writing a book. Like, you wrote a freaking book. How hard was that?
So I've done hard things. I've done an Ironman. I've had 2 children. This was top 3. This is probably, it was really hard. I don't recommend it if I'm super honest. I don't think I'll do it again. It was 2 years. Of course, it's not like a memoir, right? Like it's not like a story of my life. Like there's math in this book. There's exercises to do. There's other people's contributions. We had to get a lot of folks to approve it. But it's a real book. It's 250 pages. Like it's got source content. It feels really good. It feels really good to have it done and to have people like you find value in it because you're always worried, right? Like you do
Oh,
this
yeah.
thing and you worry like, oh my God, like someone's going to think this is trash. And there are people that will think it's trash, and I'm okay with that. It's coming for me. But it's great. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that it's out. It's available for pre-order today when we're taping this, and available in a couple weeks.
Talk to me about that comment though. That some people will think it's trash, and that's coming for you. Why do you say that?
I think anytime you put yourself in a position of, I think I'm a thought leader, or I have a position worthy of 250 pages on something, someone is going to call you on your bullshit, right? Like someone is going to say, this is not worthy, or I don't agree, or, there's a lot of people in my wake, I guess is the right answer, leading up to this moment that are going to say, like, she's full of it, or these aren't her ideas, or it's not good enough, or I expected more from her, right? And so I think anytime, especially, I tell my team all the time, digital, this is good for your audience too. Anything digital can be fixed. So perfection is the enemy of progress. Good, just finished, is better than perfect when it's digital, right? Just get it out there. You can always change it. Printed is a whole different deal. So it's loaded, and it's ready for people to judge me. Like you put this piece of thing out there and say, this is the best I can do. This is the best. And if someone doesn't like it, it's kind of personal, right? You're like, this is the best of my life, right? It's like a baby.
So how do we navigate those negative thoughts, insecurities, feelings of others' judgment? Like, how do we persevere past that? How do we not let it debilitate us or prevent us from doing the hard things or doing the things that we want to try to do?
I don't know. I think people like us, Andrew, are made of grit and resilience. I mean, I listened to your solo podcast and it was so brave. And anyone who's putting themselves out there, either on a podcast that can be downloaded and listened to by other people over and over and over again and picked apart, right? Like your kids could listen to that, your grandkids could listen to that, right? Like it's kind of the same way about a book. That this is a piece of content that will live on forever. And at some point, you just have to be kind of gritty about it and put it out there and be okay with it. I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. There's a bunch of stats around this, but they're all around the 2% number. So
This has
less
to
than
be about
two,
women.
a little bit, but it's a couple other things too. So less than 2% of female founders will break $1 million in revenue. So that's a crazy small. It's actually 1.7% of all women who start businesses will ever break $1 million top line. The number of women who break 10 million is statistically irrelevant. They don't even track it. Then the number of people on the planet that are an Ironman is less than 2%, right? It's actually a rounding error of 2%. And apparently, Forbes told me that we're already in the top 2% of all books on Amazon, and it hasn't even come out yet. So excited about that. So there's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about like this kind of doing hard things because they're hard. And usually it's because someone has told me that I couldn't do it. And I'm like, all right, watch me.
So I think I'm the same way. I think that frankly, I love doubters, and they provide a source. I was thinking about this the other day of like I don't know if repository is the right word, but like we build up a bank of motivational dopamine, and we do it through people who doubt us. And it's like sometimes they're not even necessarily doubting us in the way that we manipulate in our minds. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just about creating a source of motivation that we can carry with us to get through anything. And so, like, I have these situations that go back, 10 years. And they're such meaningless situations for anyone other than me. But, like, I think about them and I go back to them. One specifically that I'll bring up is it's just so ludicrous. When we were moving from one office to another at Molo, we were a 40-person company at this point. It was mid 2018, so we were almost a year in. And we had a 2,000 square foot box of an office above a bar in River North, Chicago. And, it's 1 person per 100 square feet is the general rule. And so we can only fit 20 people in there. We found a way to probably scram 25 in there. Plus we got a little WeWork. And then Matt and I would go and see new offices. And so we go find this office at 303 West Ohio. In fact, Paul Loeb's company is now in this building that we were looking at, Avenue Logistics. And the 7th floor, I loved it. It was all wood. It was 7,000 square feet. It was beautiful. And we were going to sign it. And I thought we were getting it the day, like what I thought was the last meeting where Matt and myself and our real estate broker went to the building to meet with the folks from the other side. And there was a new guy in the room, and it's this guy, and I've never seen him before. He's got a faux hawk, and like he just starts grilling us with questions about our business. And he's like, "Can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about your growth? Can you tell me about your revenue? Can you tell me about these customers?" And I'm looking at my real estate broker, like, "What the hell's going on? Aren't we signing it? Aren't we like done here? Like, why is he asking us about our business?" And then he proceeds to say, like, "Listen. So keep in mind, we're a year old. We've got 40 people. We want a space that only fits 70 people." And he's like, "Listen, here's the deal. Like, we're not sure you guys are going to make it and like be able to like fully fit in this space. And I want to show you another space that I think makes more sense. It's 3,500 square feet. It's actually R. Kelly's old studio," which I'm like, why the fuck would I want that? But he's like, 3,500 square feet. We think it's more in line with what you guys are doing with your business. I got up and walked out of the fucking room. I mean, he
I don't
went to
blame
take
you.
us. He went to take us to the R. Kelly studio, and I just walked back to our office. Like, Vogel called me. He's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "I left. I'm not doing a shit. Fuck that guy."
Yeah.
Faux hawk. I'm not going to forget faux hawk. It's been 6 years. When we went and then got a new space for 8,000 square feet. Within 3 months, we had to add the other 7,000 to get to 15,000. 600 employees 4 years later. It's like,
His loss.
all right, faux hawk. But what I'm saying is, like, I thought about that guy sometimes. When I was down and not feeling great, I would think about that guy. And like, I think there's like this, I don't know if everybody does it. I think people should figure out a way to do it because it can be a great source of motivation to build up this kind of bank of memories of people doubting you. Does that resonate?
Every time, oh my God, Andrew, every time I've had to fire a mediocre man, which has been relatively often in my tenure as a CEO, he has said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, multiplied by, 5 to 10 of these guys, you will not be successful because of your personality. You are the problem, and the business will fail because of you as a human being. And you will never do what you say you're going to do, and you're never going to write a book. It's never going to happen. You're a failure, like every single time. Part of me wants to send a book to every single one of these guys. And part of me is like, just really wants to tag them all in a LinkedIn post and be like, how do you like me now? How do you like them apples? And the other part of me, Andrew, is like, I'm the one laughing, right? Like, I have a really successful company. I'm so happy. Like, I love what we're doing. We are really bringing new and innovative ways to do business to a $2 trillion market that historically just is behind when it comes to great marketing and sales tactics, right? We're bringing new tech, like the ROI for our clients is out of control. I'm making jobs, I'm helping them make jobs. Like the more revenue that we help our clients achieve, the more jobs they can create. And so I absolutely feel this deeply. Another really quick story is I did an Ironman in 2009. And the reason I did an Ironman in 2009 is because a guy that I had a crush on in high school after college told me that I was not athletic enough to do an Ironman. Like to my face at a bar in Wrigleyville, well, you couldn't do an Ironman. You're not athletic enough. And I was like, okay, let me sign up for it right now. And I did. And so this very deeply motivates me. And my team actually knows it. They'll do things like tell me I can't do something just to watch me do it. So it's a really good way to, my children know this too. They'll like tell me I can't do something just to get whatever they want.
Yeah,
It's a
like,
deep
you
motivator
can't,
for me.
you won't buy me McDonald's right now.
Right, exactly. You're not a cool mom. You won't take us to Wendy's. And I'm like, no, why would we go to Wendy's, right?
Spicy
But
chicken
yeah,
sandwich.
it's a serious motivator. I closed my husband. I literally
This
said
was a
that
great
out loud.
story in
It's a
the
great
book.
story. Yeah, it's
Tell
in
the
the book.
story.
Really? It's a
Tell the
great
story.
story. So I did Ironman. I'll keep it short. And my husband, my now husband, says to me, "We will get engaged after the Ironman." So I heard at the finish line of the Ironman. Obviously, I was a 26-year-old girl. I was ready to get married, and there was no ring at the finish line. Like a week later, we IPO Echo. Like it's all the same month, right? And so I now have done an Ironman. I teach spin class in the basement of 600 West. I have a really strong career. I've done an IPO. I am a 10 out of 10, Andrew, like on the Chicago dating market. And I worked at a freight brokerage. Like I got I got pick of the litter, right? Like if I need to like go find a husband, I can. So, hey buddy, if it's not you, it'll be someone else. So he's like, okay, stop freaking out. We'll get engaged. So I did what every girl will do, and I booked the church. So I booked my parents'
To be
church.
clear, him saying we'll get engaged was not him offering you a ring or
No,
asking you to marry him. He did not
he did
propose
not actually
before
propose.
you
I had
took
no
this next
proposal.
step.
That's right. So I called my parents' church and I booked the church, and the priest said, "Congratulations." And I said, "We're not engaged, but if this doesn't get it over the finish line, it's okay. You can keep the $100. Like it's cool." And so I took the receipt for the church, the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and I put it on my refrigerator in my house that I owned. And I took all the magnets off the fridge. And he came over one night and he was like, "Hey, what is this on the fridge?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I booked the church for my wedding." And he's like, "What wedding?" And I'm like, "My wedding in 268 days. And if you're not going to be there, I will sell this to the highest bidder. But this is the next thing on my list of things to do. And if it's not you, it'll be someone else." So I had a ring 2 weeks later. And it's like a great story. And to this day, he would tell you that he would have waited another like 2 or 3 years. He was in no hurry. But I was like, I had things I wanted to get done. Right. So, yeah.
You know what you
Actually,
want.
I don't usually share this part, Andrew,
Oh yeah.
but I will with you and all of your listeners.
Thank you.
When I first met him, the very first night I met him, and I brought him to my girlfriends, one of my girlfriends told me, he is too good looking for you. So if I bring this full circle, getting my nuclear engineer fitness model husband to marry me may have been full circle to just prove her wrong, now that I really think about it.
Don't tell her that. Don't tell him that.
It's okay. She's not afraid. She won't listen to it, but
That's good. Let me ask you this. What advice do you have for other women in this industry who want to be confident, who want to say what they mean what they say, and have a voice and be type A, and know that, like you have countless times, you will be called out for that in a negative way. And that's a hard thing to just accept, knowing that 90, this is a guess, but 90% of the decision makers in this industry are probably male, or 80 at least. And you've said a number of times on this podcast, and you've said it to me before, that, like, you deal with that a lot. And, part of what makes you is you and your personality, your type A. You say what you mean, you go get what you want. You don't give a shit what's in your way. You're going to go make it happen. And those are phenomenal characteristics of a leader. It's bullshit that when you tag woman to that, it then becomes a potential negative feeling for people. But, and we could spend all day trying to fix that, but I can't fix that. We certainly aren't going to fix that right here. So you have a voice, and you have an opportunity now to speak to women who I think hear your story, and probably it resonates, and probably want to emulate it or follow that path. What advice do you have?
my advice is to back up your point of view with math. I think you will not get a seat at the table, like we've mentioned now a couple times on this podcast, without having the financial math, like understanding the unit economics of the business, your impact to the bottom line, and what that like really truly looks like. If you don't know that math, like, you've got to have a point of view. Just being in the room isn't enough for us. I mean, and being in the room isn't really enough for men either. Like, if you really think about it, like, you're not going to invite someone to the table just because you want another head at the table. Like, you're going to be at the executive suite because you are contributing something, and specifically you're contributing to the bottom line. And so I think it does take more work. We have to work harder. If I were a man, I would probably be 3 times as successful, and people would have taken me seriously a long time ago. I think it's taken, 7 or 8 years for people to sort of be like, oh, like, this is real and this woman is real. And my background, my actual like history, like Echo, Seco, Geodis, like, I have a lot of really strong just legs in the space. Like, I know a lot about the space, and I spent a lot of time here. But even now, I have to back up our position all the time with data. We are constantly proving our value with data. And I'm either really, really smart, or I'm really, really fortunate, or a little bit of both. I'm just a little bit lucky that what we've been doing for these clients and for the industry as a whole is working, right? And so I think for women, we do have to work a little bit harder. But if you can bring the math to the table, if you can prove that you are contributing to the bottom line, or you have a plan to contribute to the bottom line, or you even just understand the bottom line, and you can have a material conversation about how the business is run and the levers that the leadership is pulling to grow or scale, it's a difference between just being in the room and listening and absorbing. So back up your point of view with math. I think we got to work a little bit harder.
Yeah, the math is an interesting comment. There's something you wrote that I wrote down. Every leadership team says they want to make data-driven decisions. However, most companies are still run by someone's gut. Scale is a sexy word, but the math behind that scale is often elusive. I thought that stuck me. You can tell all the problems I had in running my business.
I was going to say that wasn't actually targeted at you when I wrote it. I promise.
You sure? Because this gut feels like it might have been. So I don't know. I just that comment resonates because it does. from my own experience, I think great leaders are taught to trust their gut, and it takes us far. But as you do get to that elusive or that word scale, and like things start to get bigger than one or two or three people's gut can effectively manage to take you somewhere. And for me at least, I know we're running up on time here, but I will say the book has certainly opened my eyes to a world that I was not, I guess, was ignorant to previously. And there's just a ton of opportunity if people are able to put their ego in check and figure out a way to work between sales and marketing to get to a really actionable future for the business. So
Well, I'm so grateful that you liked it. And that you're sharing that you like it. I suppose if you had me on here and you didn't like it, it'd be weird if you told everyone that you liked it and you didn't. Because I think people ask me like, why did you write it? Right? Like what beyond like the 250 page business card, which is obvious. I really wish that I had this in my career. Like I wish I had this playbook at Echo or Seco or Geodis, like that I had an opportunity to say to my boss, like, hey, we're going to follow this playbook. This lady wrote this playbook and I'm going to follow this. And I think it's going to work. If it doesn't work, we can change it. But at least this is where I'm going to start, and have those leaders be like, all right, like this seems reasonable. Like this person seems like she knows what she's talking. She knows what she's talking about. So feel free to follow this plan and see if we can get there. And I think if people do like 25% of the last third on measurement of like measuring volume, velocity, and value, if you just like touch that a little bit and find a way to measure a little bit of what's happening in the pipeline, there's a lot of value to be had just for measuring more than we do today. We systemically do not measure enough in freight. Like it's just there's a lack of measurement.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree with that. So, well, we're out of time.
This was so fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. It was kind of we never really got into like your life enough. I feel like it was hard. It's these things are. I mean, I just read a whole book, so like it was hard not to just want to talk about the book a lot. But we'll probably have to do this again and just talk more because I enjoy it.
There's a good story. There's a good story in the career that I'm ready to tell you when you are ready to hear it, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Well, that's all we got this week. So thank you and